Okay, so I got this question a couple days ago, which I thought would be a nice springboard question to start talking about the Chagim, the holidays, because now it's just kind of getting into that time period with a lot of different things going on, Pesach and Purim. And so the question was, someone asked me, "Hi, Rabbi, I had a question about the holidays. It just seems like they're all the same, and we just eat a lot, and each one obviously has its own theme and different halachos that we observe, but overall, the ideas and the Dvar Torahs, each one seems to say, and this is the essence of Pesach, and this is the essence of this is the essence of that, and each one always sounds very similar. So, is there any real difference between any of these holidays and how to think about them in a bigger way? So, this question really, it's kind of one of my favorite questions because I think that there's a lot of what we call cultural Judaism that floats around out there in the world. We all have it, and you think about Pesach or Purim or you think about Sukkot, and it's a culture. It's a whole life that we live because we live a halachic lifestyle and we're doing a lot of Jewish things. But and we think about it as this is what the Torah says to do. But a lot of that is really just it's a cultural way of looking at things. So you think about Pesach or Yom Kippur is this incredibly big day, and Rosh Hashanah is a very big day, and Pesach is a very intense experience type of holiday, and that's true in a way, but if you think about it, really, that's the reason why that's so in our minds is these holidays are such big things and such intense experiences for some of us is because I think it's because they take up a lot of time, and things that take up a lot of time in your life end up becoming much bigger in your mind than they might actually be in reality. Think about that. It's just the people that are in your life in the most time wise and in your presence a lot physically. Also, they take up a lot of space in your life. So. They feature very prominently. You think about them more, whether they are important in your life or not. Let's say you have a boss who's very, very intense personality. He's in your life a lot, maybe in your face a lot, yelling at you a lot, and so you think about that person a lot, even when you're at home. You're not even at work, or you're just just doing your own thing. Like the memories and the thought processes of those things, they take up more headspace emotionally, and that's just how we are. We tend to weight things that are more prominent in our minds. Because of our experiential encounter with them, then they might actually be worth. Your boss might really not be anything in your life in a real way, but you give him a lot more space in your life because mentally because of the intensity of the presence. So that's how our minds work. The reason they work that way has something to do with the story of the Garden of Eden and the Eitz Hadas Tov Hara, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that kind of makes our minds work in a certain way, and it gives us tendencies that we take things and we take them out of proportion with each other, and we don't really have things be exactly in the right place where they really belong in reality. So I wanted to just talk about the Chagim a little bit in that context, and then I'm going to do another video about Purim because I think Purim is a very, very misunderstood in a lot of ways type of day, and there's a lot of things to understand with what it is in a way that's much more, I guess you could say, real and powerful, and you can use that in a day-to-day basis in a way that's very relevant, and not even just relevant, just real, just authentic, and just not so cultural. And people have these debates about on Purim. Should you drink? Should you not drink? Also Pesach. There's a lot of discussion about kitnios, and there's a lot of cleaning going on, and a lot of jokes. This all comes with like the package of the cultural Judaism. The question is, what exactly are these things even about? So you might have heard like there's people talk about a lot. They bring these vague quotes from things that are called like the Sfarim HaKadoshim. So what that really is talking about is just a lot of books about Chassidus and Kabbalah books, and so there's this idea that people talk about, which I want to kind of put in proper context and show where it belongs properly, which is that every Yom Tov is not just a commemoration of what happened in the past, but it's actually happening now, and there's all kinds of different ways people will formulate that, and I think that's also a lot of cultural ways of saying it. But the question is, what's the source for that really? And so there's if you actually look in the Torah, so when it talks about these different Yom Tovs, Chagim, so it calls them by a phrase that is so commonplace that we don't even notice it. I think, at least I don't, when I would read it in the Torah, in the Chumash, and it's in davening, and it's this phrase that we just don't even really pay attention to anymore because it's so prevalent. So the phrase is Mikra Kodesh. Mikra Kodesh, like, usually translates as, honestly, I'm not even sure how it translates in the Art Scroll. Day of Sanctity, maybe. Mikra Kodesh. If you actually look at the words themselves and translate them properly, so a Mikra means like a call to, like it's a call to something, like when you're koreh to somebody. Ignoring for now the interconnection between the idea of being koreh, something like that, and kriya, like reading. For now, we'll just leave it as mikra kodesh. The word mikra means to call someone, to call something, call someone, and kodesh is another one of those funny cultural words that usually translated as holy. The problem with the word holy is that doesn't really mean anything to us, because to us in general, what does the word holy actually mean? If you try to ask yourself to define the word holy, so what does that even mean? So usually people will say things like it means to be separate or sanctified, or these are all words that I mean, separate I can kind of explain, but it's a very funny word, especially when you look at, notice the fact that the word for prostitute in the Torah is the word kedesha, and you might want to ask yourself why that is, in general, if you want to explore this more fully. But the word holy literally means full of holes. That's when you add a y at the end of a word, so it makes it more of that. So holy means full of holes. The word kadosh does not mean that. Kadosh really means a particular purpose, has a particular use, or it's dedicated to some particular usage or purpose, and not necessarily in a divine way, just in any way. If something is kadosh to something, it means that it is dedicated to that thing. And if you're kadosh to your work, then you're dedicated to your work. If you're kadosh to a particular person, it means you're dedicated to that person. And if you're kadosh to a particular book or activity, then that means you're dedicated to it. So that's what kadosh means. A mikra kodesh really means a call to a particular purpose. And the Torah talks about these chagim, Parshas Emor is where it shows up a lot, that these are things that are called mikra kodesh. Each one of these days is a mikra kodesh. And if you think about what that actually means, so, every Yom Tov is nothing, it's actually just a mitzvah. And we have a lot of different mitzvahs, and we can analyze what mitzvahs even are, because it's a fascinating question by itself. It's very, very misleading to say that they're just commandments. But commandment itself is a very misleading term also. Just has a very interesting association with it, and just it's really not such a clear definition of anything when you say that a mitzvah means a commandment. But for our purposes right now, so if you have like tefillin or tzitzis or whatever other things you're doing, or Shabbos candles, or you name your mitzvah, so Pesach is a mitzvah, and Sukkot is a mitzvah, and these are just mitzvos. And mitzvos in a way are kind of like the outer veneer, the 5% of the Torah, in the sense that they are the action level of lifestyle. The mitzvahs are things that you do, and they're things that you do because you are trying to express an inner world. In fact, that's what the word emunah actually means, that you're trying to externally express, by the actions that you do, an internal vision. So you're trying to take whatever's inside of you and express it outwardly, outside of yourself. So that's what mitzvahs are supposed to be. They're kol mitzvosecha emunah. They're supposed to be external expressions of your internal vision. So if that's true, so then what that means is that all these things are just mitzvahs, but if you think of the way you do anything in your life, it always works that way. Your life is full of an internal vision. You have a whole world inside. Even as I'm speaking right now, I have a lot of ideas inside my head, and I'm saying things in my mouth, and very often the things that you say don't actually correlate enough with what you think. You have communication issues with people that happen sometimes. You think you're being clear, but really they don't understand what you're seeing inside of your head. And so your words don't actually express enough of what it is that you're seeing. That's true on the level of actions too. Like every action you do has a lot of internal, behind the scenes going on in terms of your basic vision of life. When you get dressed, so that basically expresses a fundamental vision about how it's important to be dressed and how you should cover your cover your body, and you want to look a certain way, and there's a whole world that goes on, and all you're doing is just buttoning up your shirt, and that's it. So your actions really are almost like 5% of the underlying reality that's going on in terms of a person. You see somebody doing anything, we tend to just, so you see someone doing something that you disagree with, you're like, oh, why is he doing that? And we tend to look at that and just, we evaluate a person based on the things they do in that way. But the idea of being down someone in the kafschos means that you look at them and say, you realize there's so much going on underneath, behind the scenes, so how do you even know what is it this person's doing and why? So there's just so much that goes on. If you think about it, really 5% of what you do is what you're actually doing externally, but 95% of yourself is the internal world that's behind everything that you decide to do on the external level. So when you realize that, so then that kind of changes a lot of how we think about halacha and how we think about Torah, because the Torah itself, like you think about it, there's a whole world of sophisticated thought and understanding of how people work and what goes on inside of each of us that's behind the scenes. And there's so much focus on learning halacha and doing halacha. And if the halacha really is only 5% of what the Torah world and lifestyle is really about, then what's the other 95%? The other 95% is the perceptions, the understandings. And our understandings, I think, for most of us, unfortunately, consist of things like, well, there's a God in the sky, and he's out there, and if you do the right things, and you live the right way, then you're going to get a lot of brownie points. If you do the wrong things, you get a lot of not brownie points, and maybe if you're very, very Christian in the influences that you have, and you think that you're going to go to somewhere called hell or Gehenna, and then you're going to burn there. There's all kinds of crazy ideas out there that are not Jewish ideas. They're not real ideas, really. They're not Torah ideas at all. If anything, they're just superficiality. It's just superficial perceptions, I guess you could say, of the ideas that we have inside of our own traditions in the Gemara and in the Midrashim, and people just take them and they shove ideas onto them from external sources, whether it's movies about angels and demons, or you name your influences that are out there today. So that's the structure of external halacha, and the internal world. 95% is just this very, very sophisticated, complex, interconnected system of thought and perception, and it's an incredibly advanced way of thinking about things. So with that all, I guess, as a backdrop, so I think when we talk about Mikra Kodesh and what the Chagim really are, Mikra Kodesh means that every single one of these Yom Tovs has a particular purpose. In what context? What does it mean, a particular purpose? Purpose for what? What's the bigger picture of that? So really, the year is designed, all of these different periods in the year, it's almost like there's phases in the year. And you'll notice, of course, that Sukkot and Rosh Hashanah and Kippur kind of all go together in a certain way, and they're parallel to Pesach. Like Pesach, like there's a Sukkot section, there's a Pesach section during the year, and then Hanukkah and Purim kind of seem like they're connected because you have Al Nisim, and then you have this big period in the summertime where you have like Shavuos, and that's kind of coupled with like Tisha B'av, and that's connected also because like Shavuos is Matan Torah, but then you have like Chet Egel, like with the Tisha B'av situation, and the Meraglim, and like there's a whole time period of like ups and downs like that, and then you kind of go from Tisha B'av all the way into Elul, and then it kind of goes back up towards Sukkot, and like there's like a pattern, an interconnected pattern here, and really that pattern is that we have like a few dynamics in our way of interacting with people, and how our self kind of perceives our connections with other people, other selves, and even with ourselves, and also with Hashem. And there's a certain number of patterns and ways of interacting. We call those relationship skills in more modern terminologies, but there are patterns and dynamics of connection and disconnection, distance and closeness that are constantly at work that we experience with each other all the time. And just like we have every mitzvah in some way relates to that underlying dynamic, so the Chagim are the same. There's nothing special about the Chagim intrinsically compared to other mitzvahs. They're bigger, they take up more time, but that's why they're so big in our minds. But the truth is, they're just mitzvahs, and they're there to just create the same awareness, I guess you would say, of these dynamics of how we connect and disconnect from each other and from ourselves and from Hashem. And if you wanted, there's going to be more discussions in future videos about the larger system that's going on here. But for our purposes for now, for the Chagim, just understand, someone asked a question like, I feel like the Chagim are so similar. They are, because there's really just you and your interactions with other selves and other people. And then those things are kind of, there's an analogical relationship between them, between the Chagim and the way that you tend to do things. So just to give one example, one analogy, so in your relationships with other people, with other selves, so you sometimes have a situation where you meet someone new, and you get very intensely, infatuated with them. It's a new relationship. You're like, wow, this is so exciting. It could be like a future spousal relationship. It could just be a new friendship. But either way, you get very intensely infatuated with them. And then what happens is that you get closer and closer and closer. And then at a certain point, you have like a situation where it's like too much. And then you fight. And because the closer you get to somebody else, the harder it is to really see them. And that's called too much ahava, then not enough yira. Yira means to see someone, be aware of them. So now you're too close to them, and then you get in a fight with them because you can't see them as clearly. You take them for granted, and then you step on their toes, and then suddenly you hurt them, and then it leads to a mistake and damage in the relationship. So that whole phase of that intense infatuation, the exposure to a new person, and then that infatuation phase, and then going into the breakdown phase of the fight, that's what Pesach is. Like Pesach is just representing that phase of a relationship, that when you first meet someone and then you have that dynamic with them. It's the hitchadshut of Pesach, and then it leads into like the 7 weeks into Shavuos is the infatuation period, which is why there's so much change that happened in all of our lives during that period of time, but especially the way that the Medrash talks about how that the 7 weeks going from then until Shavuos is supposed to be this period of aliyah, of constantly kind of evolving and changing yourself, and then getting ready for Shavuos. And then Shavuos is this massive breakdown where you can't handle it, and then it leads to this Chet Egel story, and then everything collapses, and then it goes into very intense loneliness where the relationship almost dies, which is what Av is about. And Tisha B'av is a day of mourning, of death, that someone that you love died and is now out of your life. In the case of Tisha B'av, it's actually talking about Hashem. You could ask, how could Hashem die? It's a whole question by itself. What does it even mean when anybody dies? That's part of that whole discussion. But the point is that that's the pattern of the time period, which is that, and like that's how relationships always work. And then you have to fix it, which is when you fix it, it's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Elul was part of that process. And each of these has many nuances, and they're very specific. But either way, those nuances are just part of relationship dynamics. So the Chagim are not this giant thing that each one has like, this is the essence of something, and this is a big thing. Like Yeah, every Chag has a particular theme because your relationship patterns between you and other people have phases, and those phases are very important to be aware of. And what we do is we use the Chagim as like a way to sort of focus on one phase in a time-based setting, but really you could focus on the entire, as you say, like a composite of all those phases in 1 second. Even you can go through a new excitement, and then a infatuation period, and then like a breakdown period, and then like a making it up and trying to get being connected again. And you can go through that entire thing within the span of 3 minutes with one person, especially if it's someone that you know really well, because we have it constantly. You're very into somebody, and then you fight, then you make up, and it's so nice and warm and new again, but then it falls apart again. Like these cycles and phases are being expressed through the Chagim, but the Chagim are just a model to sort of express that in a certain context. But those dynamics are constantly there in many different ways, and every mitzvah really has to do with that. And so it's critical to look at the Chagim really as like a veneer almost, just like all the mitzvahs are really a veneer that is over the underlying internal world that we all have. And we have a very complicated internal structure and way of doing things, and dynamics of relationships and self-awareness. And the Chagim are there to sort of express that and to relate to that in a certain context, a certain way. And every mitzvah really is also. And so when you realize that, so instead of it being like this Chag is like such a, again, I don't want to bash it. I'm not saying that it's not important, but I mean, it's as important as all the different parts of the Jewish lifestyle. But if you don't have the internal part of that, then you're missing something very big, because the internal part of Pesach and of Sukkot and like each one of these, they really are all connected. With the person who asked me the question is correct. This is really all one system. So it's very important to have the underlying 95% perspective of what this is even all about. Why are we doing these things? Like, what's the point of this whole Jewish lifestyle? Not just like, there's a guy in the sky, we need to do this stuff, otherwise we get in trouble. That's not a Jewish way of thinking at all. It's not a true way of thinking either. It's also a very childish way of thinking to think that way. So this is a very big world of ideas here that is being expressed as the Chagim in a certain way, and really as all the mitzvot, and it's just a system of things that you do that are an outward expression of an internal vision. So that's, I think, the answer to that question.